Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning. And today we've got another new shell out here, and it's one that one of you guys sent in. So I'm definitely curious to see how well it does, because the last time we tested something similar, it did pretty well overall. So I'm thinking we should see a pretty decent result today as well, or at least that's the hope. So for the shell I've got out here today, it's one that BG sent us again, so big thank you to him for sending some of these shells over. But it's one of these, and I don't have the box for it, but this is an older Remington Premier Hevi-Shot Magnum shell. It's a 3.5 inch 1 7/8 ounce load of number 4s, and I believe the box claims somewhere about 1,300 feet per second for these. I could be wrong, but I don't have the box for these shells, so I don't know 100% for certain. If I can find a picture of what the box looks like, I'll put it up here so you can see, but definitely a pretty stout loading, that's for sure, and one that I'm definitely curious to see how well it does, because the last time we tested some Remington Hevi-Shot shells, we tested the 3.5 inch 5s, and they did pretty well for a Remington shell and a Hevi-Shot shell. So I don't know, maybe the older Hevi-Shot stuff is better. It's definitely a possibility, because I know a lot of the newer Hevi-Shot stuff, the pellets are all wonky shaped and stuff like that, and they just don't perform all that well. But as for the setup we've got to run them through today, I brought out the Mossberg 835 Ulti-Mag here with this choke. This is a Kicks Gobblin Thunder 680 constriction turkey choke, and it's done us very well with a lot of loads and a lot of similar loads as well. So hopefully it can get us a pretty decent pattern today. I'm thinking with 4s, a little bit more open, 680 choke might be a good idea over something like a 675 or so. I don't know, we'll just have to try it and see. So hopefully it does us well. But as for the test today, everything is the same as usual. I have the turkey target set up at 40 yards. I also have the chronograph, so we'll be able to get our speed of this exact shell, and we might be able to tell if it's in the ballpark of the 1,300 claim that I think is what these shells are supposed to be moving. So let's get you guys set up with a view of the target. We'll take our shot, look at our chrono, and then go down and see how well they performed. I have some high hopes, so let's go over here and see what kind of results we can get. Alright, so that shell gave us 1220 through the chrono. So I don't know, it could have been claiming 1,300 and this is a little bit less, but with them being number 4s, I don't know, it could be 1,200 or 1,250 as well. Either way, 1,220 is right about where I would kind of expect it to be. Not moving too fast or too slow really. So the velocity number looks pretty decent, all things considered. But how does our pattern actually look? Let's go down to 40 yards and see what we actually got. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. Now, before anything, we do technically have a dead bird. There are at least one or two that would have clipped the spine there, not to mention the few that are in the top of the chest there. But clearly, we patterned way off to the left, and I think I know the reason for that, which we'll look at here in a minute when we get to the wad, because that is nowhere even close to where I was aiming. And this shotgun typically hits pretty close to where I want it to, with most loads anyway. But either way, what we do see here is not terrible, all things considered. I haven't had the best luck with 4s until really recently with the Longbeard 4s, but this is absolutely a usable turkey pattern. It's definitely a little bit more towards the slightly more open, give you a little bit more leeway, a little bit more even side than the super hot baseball type core, but that's definitely not always a bad thing either. Our main, say, 12-inch core area right around there looks pretty good, and that's absolutely good enough to hunt with. Now, as we look at the rest, we definitely have some little strings and flyers and stuff around the edges, but with Hevi-Shot and Remington shells, and with these two being combined, I'm not totally surprised about that either. But our main area, the pattern there, is pretty uniform overall, all things considered. There's definitely not any voids within that absolutely dinner-sized plate area there that I'd be concerned with. That's still way better than the modern Hevi-Shot stuff that we've tested, that's for sure. And for a Remington shell, that's not bad either. If you had a bird anywhere in that pattern, it would absolutely hammer him. And not to mention, 4s in general have less shot in them than a load of 5s or 6s, so they're not going to look quite as impressive by the sheer number of pellets on the paper. I would obviously like it a little bit more condensed, or at least the flyers condensed more towards the main core area, but still not bad overall. I wouldn't be scared to hunt with that load if that's what I had, but at the end of the day, it's a turkey killing pattern out to 40 yards. If it was more centered up, that's for sure. Okay, and here's the wad out of that shell, and you can immediately see that we've got a big problem here. We're missing an entire petal, which we'll look at closer here in a second. But this is another one of those 5-petal turkey wads. And overall, disregarding this missing petal, it looks pretty good. No pinholes or rips or anything I'd be concerned with. It opened up pretty evenly, but let's take a closer look at what I think the whole ordeal was here, and maybe why we patterned so far left. You see how the rest of those petals are actually molded all the way from one edge to the other across to the base here? This petal you can clearly see over here on the left where my fingertip is, where it broke off, and this whole right edge right here is just molded plastic that didn't rip or tear or anything. So this whole petal was only connected by, I don't know, a third or maybe half of the base of the petal there. So when it exited the barrel, it just folded around and ripped right off of there. And here is that other petal. As you can see by the tip, it definitely did not snag on anything or the porting in that choke, but you can see by the base here how this half was clearly connected and ripped, but this half never was actually molded completely through and connected it to the base here. So when it came out, it just straight up peeled sideways and ripped off, which wouldn't surprise me one bit if that's what caused our pattern to be way off to the left. I'm honestly surprised that it did as well as it did overall, considering that we didn't have really the full-on support with the wad. It gave us a pretty decent pattern, but definitely some pretty strange performance, and I think that's probably some kind of wad manufacturer defect in this particular shell that just was happenstance, really. Either way, it's definitely something pretty weird and interesting to see. Alright, y'all, well, what did you think about that pattern right there? Definitely not a terrible turkey pattern. Absolutely a killer pattern out to 40 yards. There's no question about that, if it was centered up a little bit better. But that wad definitely did some pretty weird things, so I definitely think that has to do with why we saw what we saw. Now, is that a common problem with those shells? I don't know. It could just be a one-time 1 in 1,000 shells. I don't know that we saw what we saw, but if it is a common manufacturing defect with these shells, then that could have definitely hurt your chances at getting a turkey reliably. The pattern is definitely good enough, but if they do weird things like that, then it wouldn't be my preferred shell anyway if I saw consistent weird things out of them. But I don't know. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? As for a pattern, or were you a little bit surprised one way or the other? And if you know any more or have any experience with wads performing like that, where they're not molded correctly or something, do they cause something like this? And if you've tested a bunch of those old Remington Hevi-Shot shells, have you run across something like this? Let me know all that down below. But I guess at the end of the day, even with a weird pattern being off to the left, we still did get a dead bird, and if it was centered up, it would have absolutely hammered him. So it is a 40-yard turkey setup. There's no doubt about that. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to film for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram, as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.